Joel Embiid won the January Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month award. It would be his third consecutive time winning the award, and it would also be his final time. Joel Embiid led the team in scoring in the team's first 7 of 8 games in the month of January, and the team posted a 10-5 record in that month, which would turn out to be the only winning month during that season.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm your host, Josh Abrams. Today we're going to be talking about the Eagles' offseason as we look to prepare for the 2020 upcoming season, and then we're going to talk about the Sixers as the season continues along with them. But before we get to all of that, we must address something that happened very tragically in this country. On Sunday, we lost Philadelphia native and 41-year-old Lakers legend Kobe Bryant. He tragically passed away in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, which is just outside of Los Angeles. Kobe spent all 20 years of his time in the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers, 5-time champion, 2-time scoring champion, 2-time Finals MVP. The accolades stacked up for Mr. Bryant, but unfortunately, we lost him as well as his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 other passengers who were also in the helicopter. It was a very sad, it's been a mourning week for all of us here at Sports Talk as well as around the nation. So before we get into our segments, just wanted to send a tribute out to Kobe. Very, very hard to do so. Joining me today to talk some Eagles and Sixers is Gia Lancey, Jim Wister, and Jack Rohr. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get right into Eagles talk. We got a lot on our plate this offseason, and I know that that doesn't necessarily change as the season ends, but we saw how much this Eagles team struggled this year, and I guess I'll start it off by just asking you guys, before we get into the specifics of things, the Eagles need a lot of help at certain disparity of positions. What stands out the most to you guys? What are you looking for first when you are thinking about the offseason?
I think offensive coordinator. I mean, I think we really struggled with that this season. It was something evident that, it was just missing. And I think offense really struggled. I mean, definitely injuries, so like that we couldn't do a lot about. But also, I think we need better doctors. I mean, I don't know if that's really like on the list of who we're talking about today, but I think the Eagles really need to step up with that, because how is it okay that all these people are getting injured? Like, somebody's got to be at fault for that. So,
as much as I want, I understand your point. Do you think it's because of the amount of injuries, like the overwhelming?
I guess.
amount?
I mean, also like not even the amount, but like reoccurring injuries that keep happening to the same exact players.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. But
What do you guys think?
I would say definitely wide receiver. They need to get more weapons for Carson Wentz. He was just like one-dimensional look to Zach Ertz and a little bit of Dallas Goedert down the stretch. They need just like a game changer, someone who will go out there and make a big play when they really need it.
I agree with wide receiver, but we also need a secondary. We haven't had a good secondary for 2 years now, and it's been ugly. The defense is good. It can be really, really good, but we don't have anybody in the secondary. So they get blown up all the time for these enormous plays, and it's really annoying to watch.
Well, here and I'm glad you guys covered those two positions. I'll round out the formality of this thing and say we need pass rushers. The reason why our secondary struggled so much this year was because our edges couldn't seal and our tackles couldn't penetrate, and therefore our opposing quarterbacks like Case Keenum had all the time in the world to torch us up. Now that doesn't mean that the guys in the backfield they need to be doing their jobs too, but at the same time it's a collective team effort. And I mean, we love Vinnie Curry, we love Brandon Graham, and do we love Derek Barnett? I mean, he's starting to really go on a downward trend, not just because of his play, but because of his dirty play. Those are really
This is
just
true.
specific things. Going from there, it's very tough because so many things need to be done. In terms of free agency, who are you guys looking at for bringing in here?
Potentially for like wide receiver help, I was thinking Robbie Anderson. He's a local Philly guy. He went to Temple. He's a great downfield threat. He's not really much of a possession kind of guy, but I feel like the Eagles need like a game breaker kind of player, and he could definitely be that for this team.
All right. Well, let's talk about I think the offensive coordinator vacancy is probably the biggest one for me. Now, in all honesty, I wasn't necessarily surprised when they got rid of Mike Groh, but I did have speculation that they were going to stay extra loyal to him. Now that he's gone and our offense maybe has a chance to get off to a hot start now, who do you guys want to see be brought in? I've seen Jim Caldwell, Mike Kafka, as you saw, is staying. It seems like the options are becoming more and more limited.
Yeah, they're starting to dwindle now because obviously other teams are snapping up all the good hires. And at this point, I feel like it's not really too important for the Eagles who they sign because obviously Doug Peterson's going to continue to call the plays. So it's more of like someone to oversee the offense and like implement their schemes and everything. And I feel like since Peterson's calling the plays, it's not that important for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's also like they should probably keep it open for a little bit just because that's such an important position to fill. And I think that they really need to see who's comfortable in the position before like they lock anybody in.
Yeah, I don't have a specific name, but anything that can make the offense better than what it's looked like the past 2 years. The running backs, we need a good runner. We need someone that can help open up the running game. Because Miles Sanders showed a lot of flashes this year, but it wasn't enough. And something that can open up the passing game, because it just hasn't worked out that well over the past couple of years.
So, I mean, I guess when you're looking at not just free agency, but the draft as well, I'm not going to ask you guys specific names about the draft, but I think it's the topic of the Eagles not being able to draft very well, especially in the first couple of rounds, that has to be fixed this year, and I think that's the key factor in having a successful offseason. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, like, besides Carson Wentz, who has been our best draft pick in the past few years?
And to interrupt you, who has been, besides Carson Wentz and, maybe Barnett to an extent, what other picks has Howie Roseman made? And that's really my big thing, because Howie Roseman has done, we love him for his magician-like skills at fixing the cap, but he is really starting to get on my nerves with this drafting.
Oh, we know.
With the drafting issues. I guess just speak on that. I'm not going to ask you guys for specific names, but what can be done this year by the front office to at least change the narrative?
I mean, personally, I really think they just need to hit on the first round pick because that's where you find your true stars. Like middle round players and back end players, usually are role players and nothing much else. There's like a few examples, like Tom Brady obviously was a 6th round pick and turned out to be the greatest quarterback ever. But like for the most part, your first round picks are the ones you need to hit on. And the Eagles need to make sure they pick the right player this time around in the first round.
Yeah, you just got to knock those picks out of the park, make them the best players they can be. They don't have to be the flashy players that people probably want to see. It doesn't have to be a wide receiver in round 1 if that's not the pick. Don't fall into peer pressure just because the fans are calling for it.
So
Sure.
we have the 21st pick in the draft. That's going to be our first pick of that draft. What position do you guys want to see them attack first? Because I mean, I think the draft is loaded with talent at wide receiver, but there could be some pass rushers and maybe even some linebackers in there that we don't really know a whole lot about.
Probably, I think wide receiver, just because like we need some new, fresh talent, maybe just to switch it up a little bit. I mean, I think just getting somebody who's young in that position is probably our best bet because I think we can find in other positions older players who will still benefit for the offense or defense. But
I mean, it's hard to kind of like predict because you never know how the draft's going to turn out. It's such a late pick that like mock drafts,
Right.
you know who the first couple picks are going to be, but as it goes on, there's always surprise picks, people who fall you didn't expect to be there. So really depends on how it goes. But I feel like receiver may be a position they can kind of wait on because it's such a deep draft class that you could get maybe like a game-breaking kind of talent in round 2 or 3 and then like shore up maybe like the defensive line in the first round.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Just take the draft as it comes. Don't force the wide receiver pick if it's not there. If it's such a loaded class with wide receivers, wait until round 2. Just give it a shot. Or if you think you have a guy maybe before your round 2 pick, trade up for him. But if there's a guy that you want and he's not the position that you were hoping for in round one, don't force it.
Right. Yeah, the Eagles are obviously going to have to be smart with that. Going back to the offensive coordinator conversation, we know obviously we just said Mike Groh's gone, but another name that's been kind of surfacing within the organization, and he's been in the organization for a couple years now, is Deuce Staley. And we know him as the running backs coach. And our running game, with the exception of last year, you know, you take this year and the Super Bowl year, the running game was our strong suit. So with that being said, do you guys think Deuce Staley would be a good fit for at least the offensive coordinator title? Because we know the position's a little bit varied with Doug, but do you think Deuce would be a good OC?
I think he would be. He seems to be a player's coach. They seem to all like him, and obviously being a former Eagle, he has like some kind of standing with the fans. I believe they should just give him a shot. It'd also help with the minority coaching problem in the NFL. Get another minority in like a prominent position.
Sure.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I just think if we can bring it back to those good years, I mean, if he's the one that's going to do that, then sure. You know what I mean? And I think, like I was saying earlier, it just needs to be somebody who's really comfortable in the position, and obviously he's comfortable with the team. So I'm okay with that decision.
Yeah, just give him a shot. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Why not?
Real quick before we go to commercial break, this is very minor, but you know we do want to talk about it. Carson may or may not need a backup this year. Josh McCown is going to be 41 at the start of 2020, so I don't know. He does say that he wants to come back and play, but in this regard, as minor as it is, would you rather have McCown stay as his backup, or somebody like the names of Joe Flacco or another veteran quarterback who's been around? And no, not that McCown hasn't been around, but the question is, are you okay with having McCown stick as the backup QB?
I'd probably rather see someone like Joe Flacco. I mean, he's from around here. He's from right in South Jersey, right next to my hometown, actually. So I'm sure he would love to be in an Eagles uniform, and I'm sure the fans would love to see him like that. And I think, he's a veteran, so he is comfortable in the position and is willing to, is going to be able to step up. So I would rather see somebody like that than McCown, because, I mean, he's really passionate about it, and maybe he can stay and be in some sort of coaching position, assistant position, but I don't really think he should be playing again.
Real quick, Jim?
From a talent standpoint, Joe Flacco would make sense. From a personality standpoint, I feel like he's never really shown the qualities of being a good backup, supportive to people. With the Baltimore situation, he wasn't very supportive of Lamar. In Denver, he got benched for Drew Lock, and it didn't seem like they had a real good relationship. So I feel like they could maybe do better in backup quarterback search than Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I think the Denver situation kind of solidified that. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere, though, because when we come back, we're going to talk some Sixers, so stay tuned. How does a general lose to an egg?
There is a show for that. It's called Backstage Pass.
See the new library plan?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, doing stuff in the library. Oh.
In the library? The new library.
There is a show for that called LTV News, where the action never stops.
I wonder how the basketball team is.
There is a show for that called Sports Live.
So are you a Carson Wentz or Nick Foles guy?
More of a Nate Sudford.
Oh, really? Interesting. Wonder where we can hear about Philly sports.
There's a show for that called SportsTalk Philadephia.
You like Family Feud?
Yeah.
You like all shows like that?
Yeah.
I wonder if LaSalle has a show like that. That'd be kind of cool.
There is a show for that called Q&A.
I really wish that we could just display our talents.
Yeah, me too.
There is a show for that called Explorers Got Talent.
All this and more on LaSalle TV.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philly. We are moving on to Sixers Talk now. And last week when I introduced the segment, I wasn't necessarily too happy with the Sixers. And not just because they weren't in first place, not because they weren't the best team in the league, it's because they're underachieving. Ever since then, they've won their next two games, and really most importantly, the first game that they won in between this week-long break we have is a huge home win against the best team in the West, the LeBron and AD-led Lakers. I don't think it was very surprising to see that happen, right? Because we saw on Christmas Day what they did to Milwaukee.
Right.
And, the Bucks and Lakers are different teams, but that's still number one and number one. So, just start off with you guys. Just, where do you guys stand right now with the Sixers?
That's absolutely what we said last week, that they just step up against big teams, and it's annoying. I
Right,
mean,
sure.
like, what are you going to do about it? But it's great when it happens,
Yeah.
and then they lose to the Magic, and you're like, okay. Well.
Yeah.
But no, it's great, and it's really good, and I really hope that, like, they're kicking the
turning
butt.
point,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like, keep up with this. This is your momentum. Let's keep going. Don't go back downhill.
I feel like they think they can like flip a switch, like LeBron's Cavs teams did a couple years ago, where they're just like, we'll get to the playoffs and then we'll just turn it on, run the gauntlet as like the 5 seed, and just
Right.
make the finals. And they're not that team. They have so many on-court issues they need to fix, and they're not. I think they feel like they're something that they aren't.
What do you think, Jim?
I feel like that Lakers game really showed what this team could be when Ben Simmons is locked in and ready to really take over a game, because he's so talented, but he's so passive sometimes. Like, when he decides he wants to take over the game and win the Sixers that game, he's going to do it. And when he's locked in, we're one of the best teams, probably the team to beat in the league.
Sometimes it's so simple because we know Ben Simmons has the ability to shoot, but he doesn't do it on the floor. So instead, he drives to the basket, and if he will absorb contact and try and finish strong, but he doesn't want to do that all the time. When you do that, it's low percentage shots, so he passes it out to his shooters. That's really in the half-court set. We know how elite he is in the transition game, but I do agree that he does get a little passive sometimes. One who isn't passive is the guy who returned for us finally, Joel Embiid. He scored 24 points, ironically enough, in his first game back. This was happening all around the league, tributing to Kobe. With all that aside, he scored 24 points on 13 shots. That's got to be very encouraging because we know the discrepancy of how they play when he's out and it's Simmons and crew. So just talk about that a little bit. Like, what did you think of Embiid in his first game back?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I won't be totally specific about Embiid, but I just wish that they would find the balance where they can play with both Ben and Joel, and the switch is on. You know what I mean? It's so annoying that Ben just sits back. I mean, Ben steps up when Joel is out. Like, he needs to do that all the time, and I mean, he does occasionally, and
Right.
when it's big games, but that just needs to be consistent, and I just really hope that they find that balance soon.
Yeah, as Gia said, it seems like whenever Ben's on his game, Joel's kind of taking a game off, and then vice versa. I feel like they both need to just figure out how they can both lock in and play their games and make them work together, because they're obviously some of the most talented players in the league. They just have kind of clashing styles, and they need to figure out a way to make them work together if we're going to go far in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I feel like they're just both best on the inside. So Ben's able to step up when Joel's out, and now that Joel's back, it's like that the paint is clogged, and Ben's just like, well, I can't do anything. And I feel like he just kind of throws in the towel, He's like, I'll just figure it out. I'll get my 16, 10, and 7, and I'll be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's and that's where it gets tough because we're adding Embiid back to the mix, and there is a big discrepancy there. But luckily, we're in a good enough position where we have a little bit of time to figure that out. What I want to figure out now, and I've been waiting for this all season, we'll talk about it every week for as long as it's happening, the home and road discrepancy. Keep in mind that the two games that the Sixers played within the last week were both at home. We barely beat a close to last place Warriors team by 11. That's got to be a little concerning still, right? I mean, I know it's the NBA, they're professionals. You play the game any given day, whatever, but on paper, realistically, we should be beating the Warriors by more than 11. So just talk about that a little bit. Will it give you guys confidence if we can close out games better than the Warriors game?
Yeah, for me, it definitely would be nice to see them beat teams like that by 20, 25 points, because obviously we're way more talented than they are, and there's no reason that we should let them hang around with us. I feel like it's a case of almost immaturity. It's not to say the players are immature as people, but their game is not matured yet. They don't bring the right passion every single game. They're a little passive sometimes, like I said, with Ben Simmons, and the great players like LeBron and Kobe, they came into every game taking that game as important as possible, playing as hard as they could, and I feel like our players kind of take those kind of games off.
You want to see your team dominate for 4 straight quarters every game. And in games like that against the Warriors, they easily should. At games against the Lakers or whatever, and they won by 11 against the Lakers, ironically, too. Those are the games, it's okay to be close. You don't expect them to dominate. Those are the games when they do, you're just like, yes.
Right.
But against the Warriors, it should just be kind of a cakewalk. And they don't come in locked in. They just kind of sit back and they expect it to happen, and then they're like, oh crap, we're only up 5 in the end of the second quarter, so they just try to turn it on after that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that translates to the professional game. Like, you shouldn't be thinking that way. You shouldn't come into any contest thinking that you're going to win easily, but you have confidence that your team and that the organization itself is going to do the right things before, during, and after to make sure you're successful. And, I'm not going to speak from an organizational standpoint on the 76ers, but, certain things like that aren't very evident right now. Let's talk about the upcoming schedule, because we do have a very tough slate of games overall within the next couple of weeks leading up to the All-Star break. It all starts this weekend. Saturday in Boston. And the common theme here is all 3 games are on the road. Now we did win in Boston. Boston's not, Boston's good. They're not as good as us. But what are you, in terms of just like, the upcoming schedule, us being on the road is a big factor here. Are we going to turn it around? Because we have to.
They have to take this momentum off this big Lakers game and keep it coming. And if they don't, I feel like if they lose the Celtics game, they're all 3 going to be losses, just because they totally thrive off that energy. So, I mean, it just depends how they're feeling that day. Like he was saying earlier, if they don't bring the passion, they need a little bit of the Mamba mentality, I guess. So, right now's the time to soak it all in. So they really, really just need to come off this momentum. I mean, keep going with this momentum, or it's not going to be pretty. No.
Yeah, I feel like these next 3 games, or the 3 games that we highlighted, are going to be huge, because we win those 3 games, but that could be the difference between being 6th in the standings where we currently are and being 3rd in the Eastern Conference. And going into the All-Star break, anyone can get hot after the All-Star break, and that can completely change the whole fortune of a team's season. So I feel like if we could take a few of those games before the break, come out hot after the break, then we could skyrocket up and maybe be a 2 or 3 seed even in the Eastern Conference.
These are the type of games that teams, like we've been talking about, teams that don't lock in and they just turn it on when they feel like it, these are the games they show up for. These are 3 winnable games for a team with this kind of talent. If they don't come out with fire and try to just dominate these games and win them like they won the Lakers game, then I don't know how I feel about the rest of the season. If they can't get up for these big of games, especially with the top of the East, then it's not looking too good.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't really fear that that's going to happen because again, the evidence is there this season, and what's really more impressive about the Lakers win on Saturday was that we didn't have Joel Embiid. The Lakers were, and we also keep in mind we don't have Josh Richardson either. That's a very big key in this entire scenario that we haven't even discussed. But the Lakers game, without Richardson, without Embiid, going against a fully healthy Lakers squad, that probably had to be the most impressive win of the season, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I think the Bucks. Bucks or Lakers, definitely.
Well, we were fully healthy for that game, weren't we?
That's true. I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for Sixers Talk now. So we're going to move on to our Stars of the Month. It's the end of January. We usually do Fast Five or rants, but we're feeling good today. So we're going to talk about our Stars of the Month, and I'm going to start things off talking about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, we know we know what he is as a player. We know how he contributes to the team, yet most of us don't want him to be any part of this organization. I can't give you numbers, I can't give you specifics, but I can tell you that the majority of Sixers fans, at least that I've encountered and seen face-to-face or on social media, they want to get rid of Ben Simmons. And I feel like the narrative of him refusing to shoot a jump shot in a game plays a big role in that, and it shouldn't, because he does everything else well. Again, the stats prove it all in that he does everything. He's making more of his shots, and I know, again, most of his shots, if not all of them, are coming from within the paint, but the numbers are increasing. He is getting better, and I think he's starting to figure out his role with Brett Brown, and I don't want to get rid of that. So, Gia, talk about your star, the other good defensive teammate.
Yes, my star is Matisse Thybulle. I feel like Matisse doesn't even play like a rookie. Like, he looks like, no, not totally mature, but definitely more of a mature player than other rookies, and definitely other rookies we've had. He's a solid defender, and I mean, he's not doing everything for offense, but he's doing what they're asking him to do. I mean, he's taking threes, he's making threes, so I'm happy with his performance, and I really hope that he kind of shines a light and gives a lot of the other his teammates a little bit of a defensive nudge, because I feel like they're not doing as well as he is on defense. So.
All right, Jim, you picked Ben Simmons as your star as well.
Yes, I did.
Why is that?
Just the way he carried the team in Embiid's absence. We went 6-3 over the couple games that Joel Embiid missed, and he honestly, when he was locked in, he looked like a prime LeBron. Like, that's a comparison a lot of people had when he was coming into the league, and I feel like he's really starting to develop into that player. He just needs to become a bit more willing of a shooter just to have that threat.
Do you think how long do you think we're gonna how long do you think we're gonna wait until we see him at least attempt to take jump shots? Now, I don't care about threes. I like just spreading the floor a little bit.
With him, I feel like people forget that he's only 23. He's only a year older than me, and he's a little, I guess, like with people constantly telling him to shoot the threes, I feel like he's kind of resistant to, just because he doesn't want to do what everyone's telling him to do.
Okay.
I feel like maybe within the next 1 or 2 years, we'll see him be a consistent jump shooter.
All right, Jack. This is the Suns fan of LaSalle TV. Of Love LaSalle.
Honestly.
There's only one star on the Suns, and talk about him.
Devin Booker. He's an all-star. I don't know if he's an all-star yet, but he's an all-star. People are talking about Brendan Ingram. He's going to be an all-star. He deserves it. He's averaging slightly worse stats on a worse team. He deserves it. Devin Booker's been doing this for 3 years. And they're not even they're putting Brendan Ingram on before they put on Devin Booker. It's so annoying, and I'm tired of it. That's all I got to say. I'm done. He's an all-star.
Goodbye.
Well, mark his words. Mark those words right now. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Sports Talk Philly. Make sure you catch us on social media. Find us on Twitter at SportsTalkLTV. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/SportsTalkPhiladelphia. And you can also catch us on YouTube, where you can find the other shows there as well. Enjoy your weekend. Go Chiefs, and we'll see you next week.
Morning.
I will